And while some of those who fled to different parts of the Lake Chad Basin are returning home, over 2 million people from Nigeria's northeastern region were forced to flee their homes at the height of the Boko Haram conflict in 2015.
Over recent months, many refugees from Nigeria have felt it is safe enough for them to return home, only to find their houses and their businesses in ruins. Many residents fled south or across the border to refugee camps in Cameroon, where clashes erupted.
Around 20 houses were destroyed in this area. A bomb destroyed everything.
Many towns in the northeast saw fierce fighting between government soldiers and armed opposition. The International Committee of the Red Cross has helped construct 700 properties, with another 800 planned over the next year.
You can't compare your own house to a rented place. We are now happy. Praise be to God.
Food insecurity remains one of the main concerns in the region.
They came and burnt all our houses and tried to pursue us within the grasses to see maybe they can see a human being to kill. So we don't have any choice, so I have to go back to Cameroon and stay there.
But there are still thousands of people who desperately need food assistance, and thousands more living in camps for displaced people who have nowhere to call home. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Now, to discuss more on this, we're joined by Richard Moncrieff, Central Africa Director, International Crisis Group. Richard, thank you for joining us. So why is there a growing push for regions to secede from their mother countries?
Well, it's difficult to perhaps draw one conclusion from countries like Spain, Nigeria and Cameroon are very different places, but perhaps people are feeling that there's a mood of the time is there for change, with a change of president in the United States, an air of uncertainty in the world. Perhaps people are looking for opportunities to push their cause and to push their own agendas.
But are these reasons justified? Are they solid enough to justify these breakaways?
Well, this isn't just about breakaway. If we take the Cameroon example, if we go back to November last year when all this broke out, this wasn't about secession at all. This was about some fairly legitimate grievances around lawyers being able to speak English in their own courts of law, about teachers being able to teach in English. That was what these protests started about. And unfortunately, the government imprisoned the vast majority of the people they were negotiating with. What's happened since then is that people calling for secession have gained ground. But this wasn't originally about secession, this was about marginalisation. And I think that's probably a lesson in there, because I think that a lot of these cases start with a feeling of being marginalised in your own country. And it's only later that the desire to break away becomes more apparent.
But if the secession wish was to be granted, would these states become functionally viable?
Well, I think there's grounds to doubt that. And I think that South Sudan is something that will be on everybody's mind, because we've seen a fairly disastrous situation following their secession from Sudan. Now, of course, there was already a civil war, so violence was already in the political culture. It was already something that people were using to push forward their political ideas. And we've seen that that's grown and accelerated the levels of violence since the independence of that country, very sadly. In Cameroon, the levels of violence are not at that point, but I think nevertheless there are reasons to doubt that a new, very small state would be viable. But I think we mustn't lose sight of the fact that originally this wasn't about secession, and we mustn't just paint it as people wanting to create a new country. I think that what people really want is better inclusion in the country they're already in.
But you gave South Sudan as an example. What lessons can we draw from South Sudan?
Well, I think in South Sudan what happened is people who came to power had a tradition of using violence to push their agenda, and they came in with a very zero-sum mentality. In other words, I'm going to take everything and I'm not going to let my brethren or other people take it. And it's very important that people with that kind of mindset, with that kind of way of operating, don't come into power. I think that's the main lesson from South Sudan.
All right, great insights, Richard. Thank you very much. We appreciate you joining us. Richard Moncrieff in studio with us.